Agency Disclosure Brochure. What is it and what do you need to know about it? As either a buyer or seller in the Idaho area, you will need to know or be familiar with agency in Idaho. So let me explain what the brochure goes through. In this video, I will go over everything you need to know about the Agency Disclosure Brochure so you are educated when you look at one. Now, this brochure is a consumer's guide to understanding Idaho agency. And just remember, I'm going over this information just for educational purposes so that you know the duties that are owed to a customer, the duties that are owed to a client, and the different types of agencies that are out there in Idaho. Duties owed to Idaho consumers by a real estate brokerage and its licensees are defined in the Idaho Real Estate Brokerage Representation Act, Idaho Code 54-2082 through 54-2097. Agency is a term used in Idaho law that describes the relationships between a licensee and some parties to a real estate transaction. Right now, you are a customer. Idaho law says a real estate brokerage and its licensee owe the following customer duties to all consumers in real estate transactions. Perform necessary and customary acts to assist you in the purchase or sale of real estate. Perform these acts with honesty, good faith, reasonable skill, and care. Properly account for money or property you place in the care and responsibility of the brokerage. And disclose adverse material facts which the licensee knows or reasonably should have known. These are facts that would significantly affect the desirability or value of a property to a reasonable person, or facts establishing a reasonable belief that one of the parties cannot or does not intend to complete obligations under the contract. If you are a customer, a real estate licensee is not required to promote your best interest or keep your bargaining information confidential. If you use the services of a licensee and brokerage without a written representation agreement, you will remain a customer throughout the transaction. Just remember, when you're calling the agent on the for sale sign or going into an open house, you are those agents' customers, and whatever you tell them, they could use that bargaining against you. So just be careful with what you say and get representation. A compensation agreement is a written contract that requires you to pay a fee for a specific service provided by a brokerage and is not the same as a representation agreement. If you sign a compensation agreement, you are still a customer, but the brokerage and its licensees owe one additional duty. Be available to receive and present written offers and counteroffers to you or from you. If you want a licensee and a brokerage to promote your best interest in a transaction, you can become a client by signing a buyer or seller representation agreement. A brokerage and its licensees will owe you the following client duties, which are greater than the duties owed to a customer. Perform the terms of the written agreement. Exercise reasonable skill and care. Promote your best interest in good faith, honesty, and fair dealing. Maintain the confidentiality of your information, including bargaining information, even after the representation has ended. Properly account for money or property you place in the care and responsibility of the brokerage. Find a property for you or a buyer for your property and assist you in negotiating an acceptable price and other terms and conditions in the transaction. Disclose all adverse material facts which the licensee knows or reasonably should have known as defined above. And again, adverse material facts. These are facts that would have significantly affected the desirability or value of a property to a reasonable person, or facts establishing a reasonable belief that one of the parties cannot or does not intend to complete obligations under the contract, and be available to receive and present written offers and counteroffers to you or from you. The duties that I just went through for a customer and a client are required by Idaho state law, and licensee is not allowed to modify or eliminate any of those duties. But as you can see, there are differences between being a customer and being a client. Now let's talk about the different types of representation that you can have. Agency representation, also known as single agency. Under agency representation, sometimes referred to as single agency, you are a client and the licensee is your agent who represents you and only you in a real estate transaction. The entire brokerage is obligated to promote your best interests. No licensee in the brokerage is allowed to represent the other party to the transaction. So basically what that means for single agency is if you're working with one company, let's call them XYZ Realty, then they can only represent you. They cannot bring you a house to show if it's listed with the same company. And if you're the seller, they cannot bring you a buyer. A buyer, if you were a seller, would have to come from 123 real estate company and vice versa. If you are a seller, your agent will seek a buyer to purchase your property at a price and under terms and conditions acceptable to you and assist you with your negotiations. If you request it in writing, your agent will seek reasonable proof of a prospective purchaser's financial ability to complete the transaction. If you are a buyer, your agent will seek a property for you to purchase at an acceptable price and terms and assist with the negotiations. Your agent will also advise you to consult with appropriate professionals such as inspectors, attorneys, and tax advisors. If disclosed to all parties in writing, a brokerage may also represent other buyers who wish to make offers on the same property who are interested in purchasing. When it comes to single agency, that tends to be the most common, unless you are calling the agent on the sign who's already being represented by the seller. Then that can turn into limited dual agency. Limited dual agency. Limited dual agency means the brokerage and its licensees represent both the buyer and the seller as clients in the same transaction. The brokerage must have both the buyer's and the seller's consent to represent both parties under limited dual agency. You might choose limited dual agency because you want to purchase a property listed by the same brokerage, or because the same brokerage knows of a buyer for your property. There are two kinds of limited dual agency. Make sure you check with your agent on which limited dual agency it will be before you view the property, because there can be a difference. Without assigned agents. The brokerage and its licensees are agents for both clients equally and cannot advocate on behalf of one client over the other. None of the licensees at the brokerage can disclose confidential client information about either client. The brokerage must otherwise promote the non-conflicting interest of both clients, perform the terms of the buyer's and seller's representation agreements with skill and care, and other duties required by law. So limited dual agency without assigned agents is most common if you're driving around and you see a for sale sign and call the agent on that. If you don't have prior representation and want to use the same agent that's listing the property, that's when it gets into the limited dual agent. With assigned agents, the designated broker may assign individual licensees within the brokerage to act solely on behalf of each client. An assigned agent has a duty to promote the client's best interests, even if your interests conflict with the interests of the other client, including negotiating a price. An assigned agent must maintain the client's confidential information. The designated broker is always a limited dual agent for both clients and ensures the assigned agents fulfill their duties to their respective clients. And just remember, a limited dual agency already represents one party or has a relationship with one party, but depending on whether they're without assigned or assigned depends on those extra responsibilities they have to you as a client. Now, let's look at a few other things that are on the agency disclosure brochure. What to look for in any written agreement with a brokerage. A buyer and seller's representation agreement or compensation agreement should answer these questions. And remember, should always be in writing. When will this agreement expire? What happens to this agreement when a transaction is completed? Can I work with other brokerages during the time of my agreement? Can I cancel this agreement, and if so, how? How will the brokerage get paid? What happens if I buy or sell on my own? Under an agency representation agreement, am I willing to allow the brokerage to represent both the other party and me in a real estate transaction? You should be able to have all these questions answered in going through the agency. Real estate licensees are not inspectors. Unless you and a licensee agree in writing, a brokerage and its licensees are not required to conduct an independent inspection of a property or verify the accuracy or completeness of the statements or representation made regarding a property. To learn about the condition of a property, you should obtain the advice of an appropriate professional such as a home inspector, engineer, or surveyor. Yes, real estate agents are not inspectors, but they have relationships with inspectors and people that you are going to need along the line. So just lean on them and ask them who they recommend. And remember, when viewing homes, a lot of people have rings and video surveillance. So be careful what you say. Use caution when discussing anything while viewing a property. Audio and video surveillance equipment can be used on listed properties. So that's the agency disclosure brochure, word for word, just so you know what you're getting into before you start looking for a property. You're going to want to know what agency you want representing you and the duties that you are owed. If you have any questions about anything in regards to real estate in the Coeur d'Alene, Idaho area, feel free to reach out. My name is Amanda Cuspert. I'm with the Phoenix Agency.